gotta leave, I gotta.
Okay. So Tim's first. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to April Community Connections at the Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Northwestern Energy. We are going to get going here this morning. Sorry that we had to record this morning instead of going live on our Facebook. We had a few technical difficulties. So without further ado, we've got our county represented first with Mr. Tim Higgins. Tim, go ahead and take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Yesterday's meeting was pretty interesting. I'll start off. We recognize the 911 public safety staff for its telecommunications week. So they were given a nice little plaque to hang up in the 911 center. Without them, they get about 8,000 calls a week, and they keep pretty busy. And all through COVID, none of them got sick because we kept them separated. So pretty lucky there. We are starting a section corner project. We received an RFP from about 6 different people, and Humphrey and Jurgensen won the bid, and they're going to go out and find all the corners in the county. I asked a question to the head guy in Nebraska. I go, well, how old are some of these? He goes, well, most of them were put in the ground in 1880. I said, well, good luck finding those. So,
Cutting any corners.
yeah, no cutting corners, we said. We had a report from the South Central Economic people, and Sharon Hoofty keeps a pretty busy schedule and does a lot for the 5-county area that she represents. So we're lucky to have her. We also talked about county new COVID policies. We are extending our COVID leave till June 30th, and we are allowing 4 hours comp time to any employee who brings in their signature card from getting the COVID test. So trying to use that as an incentive. We had some silly numbers like the people in the jail staff, only 40% wanted to get the shot. We had Dr. Messbarger come in and kind of do a little bit of a motivational speech to them. And, most people decide, oh, yeah, you're probably right, I should get it. So there's still a lot of doubt out there, unfortunately. One of the bigger things we did yesterday, we purchased the Kinder Morgan building down the street for $1.5 million. We're going to move adult probation, juvenile probation, work release. We'll be moving there. We'll empty the 321 building, probably move some investigators over there, the sheriff and his staff, but it should free up a lot of parking downtown. Okay, Stan?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping.
So
I was actually hoping you'd tear down that building and we'd make parking lot out of that whole building.
give me some money. We will.
We'll talk.
So the kindergarten building comes with chairs, cubicles. They left everything. So our IT department will go in, take them about a week to get that up and running. We'll be in June 1st. I doubt everybody moves June 1st, but the other side of the building, we will be hearing protest hearings for the county. It's kind of set up as a conference room already, and that's kind of what the county is going to use that for, is bigger meetings that instead of coming into our normal boardroom with the big block wall that you can't see behind, this is more of an open space. So
Did you say the sheriff's moving down there out of the?
no, he's moving to his office. They're all in the office with the police chief.
Law enforcement center.
It's just a little crowded. So they're just going to move across the street.
But the sheriff isn't, it says investigators.
Investigators.
Okay,
and,
the sheriff's staying with.
oh, yeah.
Which
Just
one?
a lot. It's just crowded, and they're going to get some of the investigators
Okay.
over there.
That was the uniqueness of us. I'm sorry, I thought you said the sheriff is moving down there. I'm like,
No, him and Brian are pals. They'll hang
Yeah.
out, so. So hopefully that, we close on that, June 1st. And then the big elephant in the room, we passed on a unanimous vote, a resolution to make Buffalo County a sanctuary county. We are one of the 40 counties to do so. It was a unanimous vote. Room was crowded with people that were all in support of it. And I must have got about 50 phone calls from people all in support of it. So,
Just want to clarify that, the Second Amendment sanctuary city, because there were some people saying we're going to be a sanctuary city for immigration and all.
No, yeah,
this
Second
is-
Amendment,
This is a
yes.
Second Amendment gun rights
yeah,
sanctuary. city.
not that sanctuary city, but the Second
yeah, I was
Amendment.
just about ready to go, what?
Second Amendment, so
Second
right to
Amendment
bear arms.
sanctuary city.
So,
Yep. County.
but passed that with a unanimous vote, and we're moving on. So that's all I got, unless anybody has questions.
Do you know how soon they're hoping to have that for the whole state, sanctuary state for the Second Amendment?
Well, if you look at the map, who's approved it?
Most of the west part.
Yeah, you look east and like every county along the river has not approved it yet, so.
And I was,
Those will be part of it.
Yeah.
well, and then I think I read in the paper, heard that the governor's not going to mandate, make it a statewide. I think he's leaving that up to the counties. I think I saw a map somewhere, what, it could have been Facebook card to say. But yeah, it's pretty much,
Yeah, everything out west. I saw the map and.
In the east, that's where I really want the gun range.
Yeah.
Tim, does that mean we can put our gun rack back in?
Talk to, what part of the county you're in? If you're in the city,
yeah, he's from Loop City, so they probably don't care.
There you go.
yeah, up in Loop City, I think you'd be all right.
I never did take
Still hanging in there?
Awesome. Well, thanks, Tim. That's some exciting stuff going on in the county. Mayor Stan Klaus.
Okay, last night we had a ton of things on the consent agenda. I'll go through those, but a couple things we had public hearings on were a couple property developments. One of them was Stone Ridge, Tim and Nancy Norwood, MP Realty. They're going to hit and plat and develop. If you know where the lake is there on that north end, there's where the street stops. They're going to go ahead and develop all the way towards the north end of that. So that comes to the council to approve that, annex it to, a lot of the infrastructure is already in place, but they're going to open that up for development. So that lake on the east side of the lake eventually will be developed entire way.
Up by Tim's house?
Yeah.
How are they gonna get street infrastructure to that east side? Didn't that vets clinic block that,
No, this is on the lake,
Down to the west side.
Stone
or the
Ridge.
west side, I mean?
Going north.
Oh, the west side.
Then that vets clinic block that road that goes up there?
Yeah, they got the
I
apartments
know
up
it's for
there.
sale right now.
Yeah, they got
I think
enough.
that's why that hasn't been developed in the past.
And then the north side of the street pushing through across the
Like up towards
drainage way.
66, they're gonna take it north.
Yeah.
That direction.
Yeah, but eventually they'll get the west side, but there's enough on the east side right now to keep them busy, a lot of lots. Then there was another subdivision, or actually just like a 2-lot up off of Antelope and the highway as it crosses out there, just a family, Capellan and Brent Hofferberg, developing a little lot, a big lot out in that area. So we approved that. Then on the consent agenda, we had a lot of things going on. Approved or sent a letter of approval to the Liquor Commission for Upper Room Brewery. We had the ribbon cutting there a couple weeks ago for their patio that they're going to the north. So we sent that, approved that. And then also what we do when it goes to Liquor Commission, we've had some, I would say, run-ins over the years. So generally, we just send either no recommendation or recommend approval. If we've sent things in the past where we recommend a denial and in a conflict, but we did send a letter of no recommendation on the catering license for the Cup. So I'm sure that'll get approved for catering for the Cup, which is a new business in the downtown area. Then we approved recommendations for some new firemen, Connor Brown, Steve Brumbaugh, Adam Grazier, Logan Hanson, Shane Trockholz, Vince Fulmer, and Ryan Wheeler. So we'll be meeting those folks in the upcoming council meeting. Then we paid some bills, our authorized payment bills. If you've been out by Rolling Hills, we did some things on the approach. The bridge is out there. So that work is getting done. So we approved some of that. A couple of conditional use permits for sand and gravel operations. This get the time of year when the things are gonna be cranking up and pouring a lot more concrete, things like that. Work with the Central Nebraska Auto Club to set up a cruise night on the routes and the parking and the public areas that they could use. So work through that agreement. Then let's see,
Getting moved back to July, please.
July 17th. That time frame in that area. Then signed a lease agreement between the city of Kearney and the Kearney Raceway Park for the drag strip. So we've got a new agreement signed there. And I think that was pretty much it. We got some work going on out with Midlands on running sewer and water and sewer crossing 56th Street. We've talked about that in previous meetings, going south along Cherry Avenue or Cherry bypass, so that we can get access to those lots on the west side of Cherry and Butler Ag on their building or their facility that they're going to be building. So we're going to do some work there. So some mixed payments. So a lot of good construction activity. Airport numbers were up. I think we had 1,400 employments in March. It was about a 51% load factor, which is pretty good. And in June, we should start adjusting the flight schedules, and then they probably start our second flight to Denver probably in June. So working through some agreements on that. I don't think we had that agreement. Mike and I have talked about that, but we're working through that agreement with SkyWest. Because if you recall, that second flight to Denver that Mike was able to negotiate with the EAS folks that will be at risk on that second flight to Denver, but we negotiated that price down. So it saves the city about $500,000 just on Mike renegotiating that agreement with them. So another month or so, we'll start seeing a lot of airport traffic pick up, we're hoping. So
What about Chicago?
Chicago's already going.
What time they come in?
I don't know what those schedules are.
Doesn't it leave like at 9?
No. So there's a departure that goes to Chicago. The plane stays overnight. It leaves at 7:58 in the morning. And then there's a flight that leaves Chicago at like 9:45. It gets in about 11:30, 11:45 or something.
That's a little better
like that.
schedule than what it
And then
was.
that goes to Denver.
Oh.
Flight stops in Kearney and then goes to Denver at 12:20 or something like that. So the first flight of the day goes to Chicago, and then the flight from Chicago comes here and then goes to Denver, and then the night flight comes in about 10:50 now tonight
From Denver or Chicago?
Later.
from Denver.
Yeah,
They
I heard.
changed the early flight to Denver. It used to leave like.
Not yet. I think that's one of them they're gonna be talking about in June, I think.
Okay.
I think they'll go back to that schedule that we used to be on.
Yeah, it leaves at 12:20. Yeah, it leaves at 12:20 now, so you don't get into Denver until 12:30. So there's probably 2 banks of flights that you miss.
So you would have to overnight possibly.
Yeah, or drive. Isn't that a
Did you work at the airport?
You still work out there now? too?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's really picking up. I mean, Sunday nights are usually pretty busy coming in. We usually have between 40 and 50 people on the plane there, and then Monday morning is usually pretty busy. You know, because the morning flight leaves to Chicago, we've had quite a few more taking that Chicago flight. And then, Fridays, are pretty busy, and so it's definitely picking up.
And we're starting, if we haven't starting work on the taxiway.
It's
started work on
it's
that.
going.
And then the engineers were doing a walkthrough of the terminal because we're going to be upgrading and enlarging the terminal. And I'm not sure where we're at with the parking. We were gonna do some more with the parking lot. I'd have to follow up on that. But those are two big projects out there too that we've got some funding for. So good stuff going on out there.
Thanks for your help with the bridge, Rolling Hills.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of the bridge, we also have the 8th Street Bridge, which has been talked about, going over to Yanni Park. I think they've been looking at all the design plans. I don't know how much work they're gonna be able to do over the summer. But I think when the water is out of the canal, which it came down last week, water flows, when that's done in October, late October, November timeframe, then they'll probably be working on the bridge and get that ready for next spring. So, and then also looking at the design work with the whitewater or the water trail enhancements. I don't know what they can do over again with the water coming down, but that's the beauty of it is with the way the canal and the Turkey Creek levels fluctuate and operate. You can do a lot of things over the winter construction season, and then you can clean it up and be ready to roll when the water starts coming down. So those two projects going on.
Stan, I'd like to thank you for our infrastructure here in Kearney. I was in Lincoln last couple of weekends. Roads are terrible. It is pothole city. We
Yeah,
are lucky for where we live.
I think we had, Mike said we had like 4 crews out with the pothole posse, they call them. A lot of calls, which was good. And I think they had in excess of 45 tons of cold patch that went out. And it didn't help when they go out and patch it and then hadn't even set up, and then when rain's coming, it just blow it all out. But yeah, I'll pass that on.
We're lucky where we live.
Since Raceway Park has a lot of horsepower out there, does that get you qualified to have casinos in park?
Casinos, yeah. I think we'll have to bide our time on that one. But we are looking at partnering with the county to pave Talmadge out to Yanni and then tie all that in. So I'm not sure where we're at with that, but
That's part of us.
part of some of those funding that we got that we're going to request. To put that in perspective, from Talmadge to Yanni and down, it's almost a little less than $5 million. And so people wonder why I haven't done it. Well, that's why. So we can use even just the water and sewer is probably about 2.6 something, whatever that number was. And then the paving's same way. So it's pretty expensive, but maybe we need to get it done.
Is the city of Kearney getting any American Rescue Plan Act
Yeah.
dollars?
5.7 that we can use. We're gonna use part of that to build a new water tower out on Avenue N. Those are some, you can build, because we bought that land. I think if you guys are all familiar where it starts going down the hill and there's some property right up to the top. We bought that a year or so ago, and eventually the plan is to put another fire station out there to serve kind of northeast Kearney. But first thing is going to get another water tower up on top of the hill. That'd be a great place for a water tower, and we can use funds to build that because it's for water, sewer, infrastructure type things, and that way we won't have to bond it or risk running our water and sewer rates up. So using that money for that. So that's the plan. Then we'll address the fire station down the road.
County got 9.2 million, but you're supposed to use most of that for water and sewer. We don't do water and sewer. So they went back to the Hill and trying to renegotiate. So we don't know what we're doing with it.
Yeah.
Maybe some gravel.
We've got some
We can
some
find
high
it.
level criteria, but when you get down to nuts and bolts, what can you use it for? But and broadband, we've already got some funding there to help with broadband around the community. A lot of discussion on broadband. We'll see how that all plays out.
And can you just beg forgiveness? By using the money?
Yeah, after you spend, oh, that was for that? Oh, sorry.
We did it on the school board.
Doesn't that new building have water and sewer in it?
Yeah.
Well, always exciting things happen in the city. A lot of exciting things happen at Yanni Park too, and all of our parks. And so with all the botanical gardens and whatnot. So good stuff. Thank you, Tim, and thanks, Stan. And last but not least, school board, Wendy Kreis.
Morning. Monday night was a busy night. This time of the year, we have a lot of things starting up and wrapping up for the new school year. We did start out with public participation, which very rarely do we have anybody show up to our meetings. So the rooms were packed this last week, partly because we had the entire speech team, which did take up quite a bit of space, but we also had some citizens very concerned about some of the Nebraska Department of Education new health standard proposal. It is not law yet. It is not a final draft. It's a proposal. It has been the school district itself. We have been trying to educate parents and the community about how your involvement can be proactive. They had their public hearing of sorts on April 2nd. And I know that there was quite a few people from Kearney that went down for that. There's been a survey, and if you have not filled out that survey and you have a strong opinion about what you feel Kearney community stands for and what your belief systems are, I encourage you to reach out to myself, any board member, school board. I think it's on our website, but I know it was out on a Facebook post as well. It's a lengthy survey. You can actually choose which grade you want to comment on. It takes some time, but I think it's worthy of our attention for our voices to be heard. I do believe that even just listening to you guys talk about the gun rights and what our state looks like in those type of proposals, we have some very different thoughts about education, about guns, about lots of different things in our state. So I think our voices really need to be heard. Jason Martinez spoke about the draft and brought some of the kind of an update of what happened at the meeting. And 27 of the 28 people on this committee, board, whatever it is that's putting this together, is from the metro area. And they, Deborah Neary thought that was a great mix of our state's representation.
Jeez.
So be aware that we need to speak out. The Kearney Public Schools and Kearney School Board, we have nothing to do with any of this at this time. You can talk to me all day long. I can't do anything about it at this point. It is strictly a proposal by NDE. Feel free to continue to communicate with me, but I cannot take any action. Our board cannot take any action because there's nothing to take action on. Is right now a draft situation. Dr. Janitor and Dr. Sue Greenwald also both spoke on pieces, different pieces and aspects of that. I thought it was very interesting. Dr. Greenwald brought up the fact that she was a pediatrician in Kearney for 35 years. She was an expert with child abuse and child abuse cases, very much involved in the sexual abuse side of that. And she reviewed quite a bit of the curriculum that's currently being used in Omaha that they adopted in 2016 with a very similar health standard that they've implemented already. Also looking at some other states, and she said a lot of the information is like grooming information that she had concerns about. And that was very interesting perspective to hear. So we'll see how that plays out on the state level, but it's always fun to have the public there, actually. I really appreciate that other people are engaged because, I mean, I think the first 18 months of meetings that I attended before I became on the board, the only time we had public participation was baseball. I mean, so that was.
Is there a concern by the public schools that the eastern part of the state, represented by 27 out of 28 people, go radically left on sexual orientation and things like that at a very early age, that a lot of parents are going to pull their kids out and go to private schools? Because I would.
Yeah, one very interesting thing about the health standards is that we do not have to by law adopt them.
You can opt out, right?
We can opt out of that. We have to provide a different plan and have it presented. But as a district, that is one thing that we can choose to opt out of. We can't opt out of social studies, science, math, reading. But the health standards does give us the opportunity as a district to make a choice for our own district. Now, history states that if we opt out, I shouldn't say history states. Historically, when we have opted out of something, we have always had a better program or more advanced or elevated program. Like we felt like theirs was insufficient. So this one might be a little bit different on how that's processed. I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet, but we do have the opportunity to opt
Do they
out.
try to use leverage with federal funding to force you into those kind of programs?
On this, no, because there's really not any federal status on this. This is strictly a Nebraska Department of Education leverage right now. Let's see. The next thing we jumped into was recognitions. A lot of you are familiar. We talked about it last month. The Aram family donated additional funds to KPS to start a tutorial program in the basement of the Hanny Aram Center for Success. So that the timing was excellent in the fact that we still had BD on site. So we were able to facilitate and have those vendors continue on with the project downstairs. Mr. Cordes, if you want to see what's going on down there, Mr. Cordes, I know, has a great little thumb drive and PowerPoint that he can share. We're basically making some small rooms for some of those more one-on-one, more intimate things. We have a very, very large open conference room area that can also be subdivided as necessary. It's going to offer, the focus initially is going to be grade 3 through 12th grade. We are hopefully going to utilize our National Honor Society students as those tutors so that we are able to just continue to be wise with our dollars, but also facilitate these students that have these gifts to be able to help to give back. And it will be open up to the community. It will not be something that is just for KPS. This is truly a community program that the Rams felt was extremely, extremely important. And we are forever grateful for those additional funds to complete that basement project, because we just had extended our dollars as much as we could to get that building going. The next piece of recognition was that the Kearney High School speech team was state runner-up. It's the first time that we have placed. They've basically recorded it or kept track since 1973. And those young people and their coaches were in the audience, and we got to congratulate them for their work this year. Our next recognition was Brooklyn Lillyhorn. Many of you know Mark Lillyhorn. He's very involved in the chamber here. His oldest is an extremely talented young woman. I've known the Lillyhorns for quite some time and friends on Facebook. We talked about Facebook earlier, but I've gotten to see her projects evolve just through her mom's posts. And she has, over the last couple of years, had her pieces submitted to some of these national competitions for ceramics. And last year she was awarded a $22,000 scholarship to the Kansas Art Institute. And I may not have the exact correct school name for that. And this year her pieces went even further, and she was offered and awarded a full ride scholarship to Alfred University in New York. Extremely prestigious award and accomplishment, very, very incredible. And she did choose, after her college visit last week, they were up there last week, that she will be going to Alfred University. And if you've not seen her two pieces, I know the Hub covered it. She has a gorilla and a giraffe that are just incredible, absolutely outstanding. So it was fun to get to recognize her as well for that. Ms. Denise Christensen presented and in our presentation about what's going on with the Merrymen, what has transpired over this last year, what the goals are moving forward. That woman has such a huge passion for that project and for the Merrymen. I'm on another chamber group with her, and she just exudes the Merrymen. And so it was really fun to see just what we have done in the past, the funds, the engagement with our youth to find their passions with theater and the different things that come in from a family level, besides a musical level, besides an artistic level. A really cool young woman created on the actual Merriman stage a completely silent presentation with puppets. They might have a different name than an actual puppet, but they were the crane story, the story of the crane migration.
It was actually Jim Henson's daughter, wasn't it?
Was she the one that,
I thought that's what she
that
said.
could be. I know that it was, I mean, I think you're right. It was Jim Henson's daughter came and did this, and now it has become such a huge production. She has been performing this in major theaters, that she'll be actually at the Lead Center, and it has grown and developed so much that it's actually too big for our Merriman stage now. And so they're going to try to create some, like maybe a bus trip from Kearney to get to the Lead Center to be able to see this performance. It's on the crane migration, but yeah, that started in Little Oak, Kearney, Nebraska. So it's a very cool story of some of those things. The next piece that we talked to was Mrs. Morgan Bird. Love this young gal. She went to school with my oldest. And so it's just fun to see our youth come back and then come back and pour into our schools. And she is one of our social workers at Kearney Public Schools. She is at Buffalo, Glenwood, and Bright Futures, and how Kearney Public Schools has partnered with the Care Portal. And some of you may be familiar with the Care Portal. You're very familiar with the Care Portal because it was created by Compass. Is that correct?
Well, we are an implementing partner of Care Portal. It's out of Kansas City,
Okay.
but we brought it to Nebraska.
So it's basically a one-stop shop for support, would be the very simplistic way of talking about it. But it's a tool for our school, for our social workers to put in a need into the system for one of our families or students, and community partners are the support of that, whether it's churches, entities, businesses, personal people. And so she told a story of a family that they had lost jobs, actually they got a promotion, so they lost all their support, so they could no longer afford their rent. And that fine line of, do you take the promotion for more income and lose all your support in that transition? And so they had to move back home with family, and they're sleeping on air mattresses, and the community through the Care Portal was able to get them not only mattresses, but someone stepped forward and gave them their deposit and their first month's rent to be able to get to their own apartment and be on their own. And they have 3 littles, and this was just a huge story and success of just one of the things that the Care Portal has done. So really cool to be able to see some of these other programs that are partnered with KPS, that are a part of KPS. Our community is just outstanding. The next thing we jumped into was the legislative updates. And everything budget is really what KPS focuses on. Dr. Edwards talked about that out of the education commission, basically, our education chair brought a couple different bills to the table that we would be in support of. One would be the changes to TIOSA based on a pandemic, to have some type of language in there to address. Because with TIOSA, it's also about attendance. There's all different pieces to that formula that don't take into consideration if we're not in school, and if we have students that are not in school because of a pandemic. So it'd be something that would be very beneficial to a district our size who already gets harmed in TIOSA sometimes. So she's wanting to have some permanent language in there. God forbid we would have another pandemic, but at least there will be some protection. And that's LB 323, and then LB 529 is basically some redistribution of how lottery funds would be used to help support some of the systems within the school districts. So it's really just kind of more of a redistribution of how it could be more helpful. And Dr. Edwards would be a great one to talk about that, not to Wendy. Wendy's not your legislative expert on the board. Then we jumped into Drew Blessing. He sits on the, basically the school board side of legislative decisions. And he has been watching those very, very closely, and keeps me very much apprised. He has a flowing spreadsheet for us as boards to keep track of what's going on a daily, weekly basis. But LB 644 is requiring that all public subdivisions have public hearings. This will affect the board, the city of Kearney, that at any time we send out basically our postcard notifications as a partnership, that we're gonna have to have public hearings combined. The three entities get together and somehow,
Actually, multiple.
yeah, it's
more
not
than
just us
three.
three. Yeah, it's more than three of us. It's basically any of these political subdivisions within our community that we would have to all get together. One thing that they did do, it's gone through and passed the first round of discussion. But one of the things that we were concerned about from our standpoint is that Kearney Public Schools actually crosses into two counties. We cross over into Kearney County as well. So we were concerned that that was going to require us to have two of these partnering, but they did say that where your predominant, I don't know what the exact language was, but basically where the school is where we would have that public hearing. So this can be costly, this can be cumbersome for all of us to make that happen. So
It's cumbersome and unfunded.
required but unfunded, just like special ed.
At the same time, trying to control property taxes and other bills, but then they pass crap like this.
That wants us to try to work for free, and
Government overreach.
little bit. And then another one that we have a very large point of contention with, and not because your school board is not about proactively wanting property tax reduction, because we are extremely aware of that. We are all taxpayers, just like the rest of you, paying those same property tax bills. But LB 408 is going to limit the property tax increases to 3%. This has a huge challenge for Kearney Public Schools because of TIOSA. And our state funding is such a huge variable that over the last 10 to 15 years, we had a 16 to 17% reduction in our state aid. And if we can only make that up with a 3%, guess what happens? Teachers are let go, programs are dropped, because 86% of our budget is manpower. I mean, 14% is what we use for operations. So we are not excessively wasting funds. And they're also, with this LB 408, going to limit the number of times that the voters can override it. So if we need an override, if we need to go to 3.5% or 4%, because we've had a 16% reduction in state aid, and we still have our federally mandated special ed programs and our state mandated support programs that we have to offer, we can go to the voters for that approval of that increase, but they're also going to limit the number of times that we can do that. So, and then that adds the cost of a special election. If we don't have an election that year, it's not saving you as taxpayers any dollars, and it's really harming your children. At this point, Senator Lowe has been showing that he is a proponent of this. So I would like you all to write your senator and tell him that this is not good for our schools.
Which is the LD for American.
LB 408.
Don't get stated. I started on that one.
It's, yeah, I don't understand a lot of legislative stuff and how they're all tied together. Like I said, that is something I'm working on to really understand more and more. This one I've spent a lot of time with Drew, and studying and understanding and asking the questions through Mr. Nielsen and through Dr. Edwards for me to really make sure I have a good grasp on this. Drew has a great letter that he's more than welcome to share. If you want to have some of those facts and some of those statistics, Mr. Blessing would be the one to reach out to. He can assist you in that, but it's not sounding positive that Mr. Lowe is going to change his mind on that.
No, and I'll just jump in real quick. From the city's perspective, when we've kept our prop, because it's all based on your levy, on your property tax. And our levy is so low that Kearney really gets penalized, because you can't manage your your growth costs and all those things. There's a growth component in there, but there's a formula that goes in there that we can only maybe get 3% of the 45,000 growth. Well, that's nothing, and so the most, in fact, Mike ran some numbers and we're still looking at this, but the most maybe the city of Kearney could increase might be 140,000.
It's like 132.
Yeah, so you can't buy a fire truck for that. So we would have to go vote of the people to buy a fire truck. You'd have to go to, it's just crazy on how, but Kearney is we're the outlier because everybody else is, like you get Bellevue and some of those that their levies 50, 60 cents. Well, they're going to get 3% of that plus municipal equalization money. Grand Island and Hastings, they get like $1.5 million from the state. Kearney gets zero. Our property levy is 14 cents. Theirs is 35, 40, 50 cents. So when you take those increases and those percentages, they're going to still get millions and we're going to get thousands.
And that's the same.
Penalized because we worked hard to keep our.
So
Exactly.
what's going to happen
Low.
pretty soon? Okay, well, we better start getting our property tax valuation up there and we'll take the 3% every year, whether we need it or not, just because you got to protect future councils.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
And that's exactly what with TIOSA in that state aid formula, Hastings, Grand Island, LPS, OPS, Bellevue, they all get Hastings gets more money than we do from state aid.
So,
And their school district is, way, way smaller than ours. So the same thing, we have been very wise. Last year, we gave, that penny back in our levy, and that could hurt us even more. It doesn't sound like much, but those are the things that we are stuck with on that. We also had our normal consent agenda where we paid bills, paid claims. We had, basically, it was the approval of the minutes from our last public hearing as well. We approved the FCCLA's leadership conference that's going to be held in Nashville in June. They're still looking at what that's going to be, whether it will be live, virtual, a combination of, but we needed to get that approved because if they do open that up, we want our students to be able to attend. And then we had our preponderance of information this month was our retirements, resignations, and rehires. Very exciting. We had three previous KPS students put back in as teachers. So we have 3 of our past students coming back as teachers into KPS. We have some previous teachers coming back to KPS. A special recognition, Jan Giddings, I think it's Giddings. She's a second grade teacher out at Glenwood. She is retiring after 39 years and she spent all 39 years at Glenwood. So sad to see her go after all those years of being at one location. She's our longest tenured teacher in KPS that's retiring after 39 years. So she has spent basically her entire career with us. So super awesome to just see that history. It's sad to see it go, but it's just nice to know that we've had some of those people pouring in. And regular business was we had to buy a bus. We had to buy 3 buses actually. One of our liners, we don't have a replacement plan for our liners because there's not really a normal projection on their lifespans because it can depend on how much traveling we end up having to do. We own our liners because we do travel so much. It's not something we can just go rent every time we have an event. Omaha, Lincoln, some of the bigger schools on the east side of the state will actually just rent their liners for their events because they don't go very far, where we go mostly far east. So one of our liners, we just can't get parts for anymore. They just don't make them. It's getting to be that we can't even maintain it. So we did approve the purchase of a 2015 MCI J4500 for $226,450. It has 315,000 miles on it, but they still provide us with a 6-month bumper-to-bumper warranty and a 1-year powertrain warranty on it. But this is a good bus. Becky Ryer who's been our transportation director for a very long time, knows her buses, knows her mechanical pieces. And this was the one that she suggested for us. And then we did have two of our smaller buses that were on cycle in our normal budget schedule to be replaced. And those also went out to bid, and we ended up let's see, we bought two 2022 Microbird G5s, and they were each $72,613. They meet all of our specs and requirements for our wheelchair. They're basically our wheelchair buses. So we got those, and we actually had Coach Masters of Kearney offered us a greater trade-in than either one of our bids. So we'll be selling those two buses for $13,000 to Coach Masters. So that'll help us bring that price down. And that was the end of our meeting.
Thanks, Wendy.
Maybe a shout out to Kearney High staff for helping host the state speech competition. Normally we do that at UNK because they weren't having spring break. Your staff stepped forward and helped us host that. So thank you.
Absolutely. We love being able to utilize our facilities on those type of projects and just to continue to promote the opportunities for our students. So, yep, thank you.
Every hotel room in town was packed. No rooms available.
Yep, a lot of parents were wanting to do
Good
little
sign.
vacations, and that kind of messed with that a little bit. You couldn't get into the hotels for the pools and stuff like
Is
that.
that the
which was
first time that that's happened since the pandemic, or that all the hotel rooms were booked?
There's been a couple times.
Okay.
the freeway closed or the interstate closed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
That helped.
That didn't hurt, right?
One good thing about a blizzard out west.
You know, just to circle back to the health standards, I thought it was, as a parent, that it was confusing for the survey. And so I would just encourage people to, like, if it doesn't make sense or something, reach out to a board member. As a concerned parent, I wrote a letter to Ryan Four at the Department of Education. And I went through all the health standards. Being a former educator, some of them definitely concerned me. And so if you would like another resource, I would gladly provide my letter that I wrote, and I put the health standards that did concern me. And there's about 20 of them throughout the whole grades that just maybe should be taught at home. I want my kids learning math and science and those things, and where I'm at.
It's something that we're battling in education as an overall, that I have even noticed as a parent and as a school board member, that you need to be mindful of how it's going to come out wrong probably, and that we're incorporating parenting items into education, and we're not just focusing on education. And that's kind of one of those, it's a hard balance, because we do have some of our students that don't have the same home life and things like that. So and I know that it's not this intentional thing for there to be taking something away from parents that are very involved. I think some of the intent is good, that they're trying to provide things for kids that aren't getting it. I don't think it's all intent is bad, but there's a fine line between what education is. We are, as educators, being required to do more and more parenting things than ever before. If you look at historically what requirements are, programs that are being required at a federal or state level to be offered, a lot of those would have been parenting items in the past, and they're becoming education. And we have to meet, social studies, math, reading, English. We have all of these things that we have to get into our day. And then that was two of the complaints from, actually all three of our public speakers complained that some of this doesn't fall under a health education. It's a sex education piece and not a health education piece, which is separate. I mean, their definitions from even a medical standpoint, and that was their point, is that, at what point are we differentiating those items?
And give our schools the,
Under indoctrination rather than, because that's a belief of a leftist culture versus what I would say the average person or a conservative person would believe it. And when you start overstepping that bound, that's when people get upset.
It's overstepping, you know, that's been the feedback that I have gotten, has been you're taking away my parental rights of what I want to teach, what I want my child to know and when. And that has been every feedback that I've gotten. And I've gotten lots of emails, Facebook posts, stopping in the grocery store. That is the feedback that I'm getting, is that this is taking away my parental responsibilities and rights, and you're giving me an agenda that I'm not okay with. You know, and I can appreciate, I have not personally had anybody be a proponent for the standards in our community.
So they had a hearing on April 2nd, and then I think they're planning on another hearing in the next 90 days or something like that.
Yep, I believe so. Yep.
I mean, the district is trying to be as transparent in this and providing as much information as we can to parents to empower the parents. Because again, we can't do anything yet. I mean, we just can't. I mean, there's nothing we can do at this point until we know. And
So
whether it goes through.
I know you sent out that survey, but because you can't do anything yet, will there be another opportunity for parents to speak up or whatever down the line?
Well, I
Or
would,
is this the time? I mean, I
if we can get it so that it's not becomes a state mandate, then it's a non-issue. Then it doesn't have to come to us. If it does become the new health standards, then I'm assuming us as a board will have to address maybe some public participation in our board meetings, whether there'll be additional meetings. We haven't decided what we're doing with that piece yet, because we just don't know what it's gonna look like. We don't know what the language is gonna say of what we have to implement versus what we don't have to implement. You know, and the state there's some really cool things that NDE has done for a lot of the state standards for like English, social studies, math, sciences. Before, when they would set these standards, basically we as a district would have to go out and research every single curriculum and try to put them into a rubric to see how they compare to those new standards. The state has created a great new program that they actually have done that for us. So we can go to the state and they provided the same rubric, and they color them by red, green, and yellow. Like green, this covers all of your requirements. Yellow, you might need some supplemental material. Red, it falls very, short. So that has expedited us to be able to implement some really great curriculum, because we're not having to take our teachers out of the classrooms. We're not having to spend hours time, and we're able to expedite implementing that new curriculum, because it's not taking us years to work through this and having to meet with 14 different, curriculum providers. So I don't know, are they gonna do the same thing with the health standard? And then, I mean.
Well, we understand that it's difficult, and thanks for representing our community in that light. Just real quick, we have ribbon cutting. We've had awesome attendance at our ribbon cuttings lately. So we have one on Friday. That's at the Crossroads Mission. And we have one next Thursday, Excel Appraisal Solutions. So put a plug in for those two. Thanks to Northwestern Energy, as always, for sponsoring Community Connections, where you can get 3 meetings in one. And we will see you guys next month.